Alright, hi everyone, how's it going? And welcome to another video. Now, a few years ago, I did my second YouTube video, and I did my second YouTube video on Game of Thrones. This is because I had recently gotten into the series Game of Thrones. I'd really become a big fan of it, really liked it a lot, thought it was a great show, so I decided to do my second YouTube video on Game of Thrones. I just, binge watched the whole series, and this was at the end of season 4, so like I said, I did my YouTube video on Game of Thrones. Well, a lot has happened since I did my second YouTube video. A lot has happened with Game of Thrones. The 7th season has recently ended, and there's really been a lot of different things that have happened on the show. Personally, I think Game of Thrones is the best series on television right now, and that's why I want to do another video on Game of Thrones. I think this series just keeps getting progressively better and better with each season. I really do. I'm just a big fan of the series. Now, and I'll just kind of give a warning right now, there will be some spoilers in this video, so if you haven't watched the Game of Thrones series, if you haven't watched season 7 or some of the seasons before then I don't recommend continuing to watch this video. But yeah, with that said, it's definitely been a great season. Season 7, like I said, I think it was the best season to date. Now, I know there are some people who weren't really satisfied with the way season 7 played out. There are a lot of people who feel that they didn't like the fact that the characters in season 7 seemed to move from point A to point B very quickly, that there was no journey involved, that there was no trials or tribulations or events or any obstacles, that they just kind of went from point A to point B seemingly very easy and very quickly. And the reason why they did this was because they want to wrap the series up. They just don't have time to get into all the adventures and journeys that the characters are going on like they did early on in the series. They just don't have the time to do that now. They've really been forced to push the series along now, and as a result of that, I think it's really gotten great. I mean, it's always been good, but it's really good now because of this. There are no filler episodes in season 7. I didn't think there were. A lot of action, just some great episodes all the way around. But yeah, I know another thing people complained about was Bran Stark's vision. Bran Stark had a vision where he saw Rhaegar Targaryen getting married to Lyanna Stark. And this was at the very end of season 7. I believe it was the 7th episode, because there are only 7 episodes of season 7. So, yeah, Bran Stark saw this, and they do show Rhaegar Targaryen for the first time. Now, you've heard about Rhaegar throughout the series, especially in the beginning. Now, there's a lot of mention of Rhaegar Targaryen in the beginning of the series. And finally, they show him. There are a lot of events that occurred before Game of Thrones even started. I know I've been on a number like Game of Thrones history sites to kind of see what these events were and how they played out. And, I know there are a lot of people who are kind of upset with the way they made Rhaegar Targaryen look. They felt they made Rhaegar Targaryen look way too much like Viserys. And, they felt like his hair should have been longer. Because usually when you do see those, like, Game of Thrones history videos, Rhaegar Targaryen is usually depicted as having long hair. But to me, that wasn't really a big issue, I didn't really care how they had him look. But this wasn't really a big deal to me. I thought it was an excellent season, nonetheless. I really did. And there have been talks of when the series ends of doing a possible spin-off. Now, who knows if that will be on a character that survives to the end of the Game of Thrones series, or if that will be a prequel, because certainly you can do a prequel with Game of Thrones, because there's so many events that happened before the series of Game of Thrones even began. There's all that stuff with Rhaegar Targaryen and his duel with Robert Baratheon and all that. There's just so much that you can have in a Game of Thrones prequel. I think a Game of Thrones prequel would be great. But, yeah, so just an excellent season. One thing I really kind of got into recently, because, I've watched some YouTube videos, I read a bit about it, and certainly Season 7 had some excellent info, and that's the whole Greyjoy story. Definitely got more into the Greyjoy story. And the Greyjoy story was kind of confusing in Game of Thrones, the series, and I didn't really know what was going on, and I guess I got kind of bored. But then once, I read about it and found out what was going on, I really think it's a strong story, the whole Greyjoy story. And for those who don't know, the Greyjoys are the people who live on the Iron Islands, the Ironborn, as they call them. It's a series of 7 islands off the coast of Westeros. They have a different religion. They worship an individual called the Drowned God. And a lot of their religion is very Lovecraftian. It's very Lovecraft influenced. George R.R. Martin was a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan, so he kind of modeled a lot of aspects of the Iron Island religion after, Lovecraft and the Cthulhu mythos and all that. But, you definitely see that. But the Greyjoy story, like I said, is really quite interesting. Like I said, they're the people of the Iron Islands, and their economy is basically piracy, because they can't grow anything on their islands. The Iron Islands and life on the Iron Islands is very harsh, so they do resort to piracy and pillaging. And what I was kind of confused about in Game of Thrones is the fact that in the beginning of Game of Thrones, Theon Greyjoy is living among the Starks. I didn't know why. But I did read why later on, and that has to do with the events that happened before the Game of Thrones series even started. What had happened was Robert Baratheon had become king, and Balon Greyjoy, who was the king of the Iron Islands, refused to bend the knee to Robert Baratheon. So Robert Baratheon, Ned Stark, and I believe the Lannisters went over to the Iron Islands to force Balon Greyjoy to bend the knee. A battle ensued. Apparently Stannis had defeated the Greyjoy navy, and apparently Balon Greyjoy had lost a couple of his sons in this battle, and eventually Balon Greyjoy bent the knee to Robert Baratheon. To kind of ensure that Balon Greyjoy would continue to be loyal, Ned Stark took Balon Greyjoy's son Theon into his custody. So that's why when Game of Thrones series begins, you see Theon Greyjoy living among the Starks. And Theon Greyjoy is, definitely an interesting character. I kind of think that Theon Greyjoy is going to play a very important role in Season 8. Otherwise they would have killed the character off by now, I think. They would have killed him off by now. I think he's really going to play a very important role. Probably that role will be to take down his uncle, Euron Greyjoy. Euron Greyjoy is a whole other character that, I should mention. Euron Greyjoy comes into Game of Thrones in Season 6, where he confronts his brother, Balon Greyjoy, on one of those rope bridges. And those rope bridges are like those things that you see in the the music, the theme music of Game of Thrones. As the Game of Thrones theme music is going, you see those islands, and there's those rope bridges connecting the islands. Well, Balon Greyjoy and Euron confront each other on one of these rope bridges, and Euron Greyjoy ends up throwing Balon Greyjoy off the bridge, and Balon Greyjoy ends up dying. And then what happens is Euron Greyjoy claims the Iron Islands as his. He claims himself king of the Iron Islands. Well, Balon Greyjoy's daughter, Yura, who's also Theon's sister, contests this. And she wants to fight against Euron because of this. She doesn't want Euron to be king of the Iron Islands. Euron is a very brutal character, and you find that out in Season 7, where he attacks both Theon and Euron Greyjoy. And he just kind of attacks them, all at once. You don't really see it coming, but he launches this real heavy attack and rams into their ships. And there's just a real violent scene. And you see what a violent, brutal character Euron Greyjoy is here. Now, as you know, Theon Greyjoy had been tortured by Ramsay Snow for, a good couple seasons. But then eventually, Ramsay Snow is defeated in the Battle of the Bastards. And what then happens, I believe, is Euron Greyjoy becomes the real sadistic bad guy in Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones doesn't really do the whole good guy, bad guy kind of thing, but there are some characters that are good, and there are some characters that are pretty bad. So, but Euron shows his brutality when he destroys a lot of Theon and Euron's ships. Just like brutal battle, like I said. The Sand Snakes are killed in this battle, or two of them are killed anyways. Now, a lot of people weren't really crazy about the Sand Snakes. They weren't really fans of them. Personally, I thought that the Sand Snakes didn't really fit into Game of Thrones too well. They just seemed like Tarantino characters to me. They seemed like characters from a Quentin Tarantino film. I didn't think they really fit into Game of Thrones that well at all. And two of them end up getting killed by Euron Greyjoy. And you really see how brutal Euron Greyjoy is. Just like a real brutal pirate. And then after this, he captures Euron Greyjoy. And he then, in turn, after all this, goes to Cersei Lannister and forms a pact with Cersei Lannister. Now, Jaime is there, and Jaime's kind of doesn't really trust Euron Greyjoy because he remembers when he kind of fought against the Greyjoys and all that, so he doesn't really trust him a whole lot. But Cersei wants to use Euron Greyjoy's ships to go over to Essos and to get the Golden Company, which is something you've been hearing about. The Golden Company is something you've been hearing about in Game of Thrones for a long time. I think Stannis Baratheon had mentioned it, but he didn't use it. But Cersei Lannister wants to use it. So, what the Golden Company is it's this elite mercenary group of about 20,000 infantry and cavalry, and also war elephants. And Cersei Lannister wants to use it against Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen. And just so much has happened in this series that I didn't even get to Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen yet. I didn't even talk about them. And they do meet in Season 7. And they form an alliance. And there's some great battle scenes that happen. Just kind of out of nowhere, the Dothraki attack the Lannisters, and this big battle ensues. And you didn't even see that coming. There's no prelude to that. There's no introduction. It just happens. Like the way a battle would really happen. It just happened seemingly out of nowhere. And then Daenerys is on her dragon. The dragon's breathing fire on Lannister troops. The Lannisters use the Scorpion and shoot the dragon down with the Scorpion, which is that huge crossbow. And the dragon is able to fly to the ground, and Daenerys gets off the dragon, and then Jaime, with a spear in hand on horseback, makes a full-blown charge toward Daenerys. And I was just on the edge of my seat the whole time I saw this. My heart was pounding. It was really an incredible scene. And that's not the only incredible scene that there's been this past season. there was another one a few episodes after this. I want to say it was where Jon Snow and, some few other guys were in the north to try to defeat the Night King, and they were being overwhelmed by the Night King's forces of rights, or, undead zombies. And then Daenerys comes to the rescue with her dragons, but the Night King throws one of his spears at the dragon and brings the dragon down. The dragon crashes into the water, and essentially the Night King killed the dragon. That was pretty incredible. And then the Night King later on turns the dragon into a right, or zombie dragon, if you will. And the zombie dragon becomes the Night King's steed. And the Night King later on uses the dragon to breathe fire onto the wall. The dragon breathes this real powerful fire, like a blue flame, and it crumbles down part of the wall, and the Night King and his army are able to go through the wall and then enter the north, and enter, probably they're going to attack Winterfell first, would be my guess. Who knows what will happen there. There's been a lot of speculation as to what will happen. There have been, a lot of leaked scripts. I know this past season 7, there was a leaked script. I looked at it, I think it was on YouTube, and it was accurate. It was accurate. But now supposedly there's a bunch of them to kind of confuse people, so you don't know which is which. There's some of them that kind of, make Game of Thrones kind of end in kind of a ridiculous fashion. So, who knows how it will all end. But some people have speculated that Jon Snow will have to kind of make a sacrifice in order to defeat the Night King. And that sacrifice will be to kill Daenerys with his Valyrian steel sword. When he does this, the Valyrian steel sword will then turn into another sword called Lightbringer, and then Jon Snow will use Lightbringer to fight the Night King in this final showdown, where he ends up, Jon Snow will ultimately end up killing the Night King. And somehow I ultimately feel that, Jon Snow will be the one sitting on the Iron Throne at the end of the series. That's what I think. And I think Jon Snow is then going to do away with the Iron Throne and kind of create this more democratic government where each kingdom kind of rules itself. That's what I think will happen. I could be wrong, but who knows. And then there's that whole angle with the Children of the Forest. One of Bran's visions was of one of the Children of the Forest taking an obsidian blade and thrusting it into someone, and that person becomes the Night King, essentially. And Bran sees this in a vision, and the Children of the Forest created the Night King and the White Walkers as a means of defending themselves against the men, because the Children of the Forest were being slaughtered, and they used their magic to create these White Walkers. And then apparently things got out of hand, but who knows? Do the White Walker, who knows? Do the Children of the Forest have some sort of a plot? Do the Children of the Forest want to reclaim Westeros as theirs because they were the first people there? Do they want to reclaim it? That's an interesting angle too. I don't know. Maybe that's the big kind of twist of events here. The Children of the Forest want to reclaim Westeros. And, there's other interesting things that I wonder about. You've heard mention of the ice spiders. So far you haven't seen the ice spiders. Will they appear? Who knows? That's another thing to speculate. Some have also speculated that in order to kill the Night King, Jon Snow maybe will pull the obsidian blade out of the Night King's chest, and that'll turn the Night King back into a regular human again. That could happen. Who knows? But yeah, the Children of the Forest are something that's interesting, because George R.R. Martin did not want to do elves. He didn't want to have elves in it, so he kind of created his own thing, the Children of the Forest, which are definitely modeled after, Celtic mythological creatures like nymphs and sprites and brownies. And you can tell by looking at them that they have a definite Celtic influence on them. But yeah, who knows how the whole thing, will end. Or how the whole thing will end. I just ultimately don't know, but, be interesting to see the way it plays out. I know there have been some people who have been dissatisfied with, the comparison between the books and the series. Some people have said that Game of Thrones is one of the rare examples of the visual thing being better than the books. Some people have said that, there's certain things that the series should have included. Like, a lot of people were upset with the way Dorne was portrayed in the series, that they thought Dorne should have been portrayed a lot better, that they didn't include the Dornish plot in the series. It's in the books, but it's not in the series. And what that is like a Dornish prince forms an alliance with Daenerys Targaryen. It's called the Dornish plot, and there was a lot more with Dorne apparently in the books, and the series didn't really include a lot of that. They had the Sand Snakes, which, like I already said, I guess people weren't really too big a fan of. But, yeah, it'd be interesting to see, how all this kind of plays out. I know that was one of the complaints. Another thing was, people have complained about the fact that the series does not include Lady Stoneheart. Now, I have not read the books, so I don't really know if the whole Lady Stoneheart thing is really cool in the books, and it's something that was needed. It sounds a little weird to me. It sounds like something, maybe it's good that they did without it. Basically who Lady Stoneheart is. Lady Stoneheart is a zombified version of Catelyn Stark, who's returned to get revenge for the Red Wedding. That's who Lady Stoneheart is. And I don't know, it sounds kind of weird to me, but maybe it's really cool in the books. I don't know, because like I said, I haven't read the books, so I just really don't know. But yeah, just such a great series. I do have one complaint, and the main complaint I have about the series was the fact that Jon Snow was killed and then resurrected. I don't think they should have killed him at all. And then they resurrected him. And to me, that takes away all the danger now. That takes away all the suspense. And, now that Jon Snow can be resurrected, what need is there for him to be brave? What need is there for, him to really, be worried about anything? If he could just be resurrected again. It takes away a lot of the suspense and danger out of it if he could just be resurrected. No need for courage. You could just be resurrected again, So, yeah, I didn't really like the fact that he was killed and then resurrected. I don't think they should have killed him at all. That's been my biggest complaint about the whole series. Other than that, like I said, I really love this series. I think it's excellent. It'd be great to see how it all plays out in the end. And, if you watch this video, as always, I thank you for watching. Have a good night.